I realized something important while watching The Big Bang Theory. Everyone kept saying it was the funniest show ever, so I gave it a try. And it turned out to be the stupidest thing I'd ever watched. Yet there was so much hype around it. That's when I realized how many people are like NPCs. They don't think critically or independently. They see exaggerated facial expressions and hear the background laugh track, which signals that something is funny. And so they laugh because they are told to laugh. The laugh track claps for them, and they clap along, believing it's comedy gold. This gave me a disturbing insight into how easily the masses can be swayed by external cues rather than true substance or intelligence in entertainment or politics. This brings me to Joker, both the first movie and the recently released Joker 2, directed by Todd Phillips. I'm trying to find a unified angle for reviewing the two films, but I keep hitting a wall. I cannot make sense of what these films are about, or more importantly, why they exist in the first place. Some fans say the second movie dishonors the legacy of the first and has even destroyed the fan base. My immediate thought was, how did it get a fan base in the first place? But then again, The Big Bang Theory had a fan base, so I get it. People are often drawn to things because they're told it's good, rather than because it genuinely speaks to them on any meaningful level. The bigger question for me, though, is this. Why is it called Joker? If you took away the Joker, the Riddler, the Penguin, or any other villain from Batman's world, would Batman still make sense? A hero without a villain? Would he still be a hero? I mean, who would he be fighting? Corrupt politicians? Let's play that out, shall we? Imagine Batman bursts into the secret penthouse of a slimy congresswoman caught in a compromising position with her 8 Batmans there because, as the world's greatest detective, he uncovered that the congresswoman has been embezzling millions from the city's coffers. He grabs her, drags her to Gotham PD. But here's the real-world twist. Would Gotham PD even take his complaint, or would their first instinct be to arrest him? Batman's actions, breaking into a public official's private residence, make him a criminal. The congresswoman has connections, and she's still a public figure. She could easily spin the story. The aide, under pressure or out of fear for his career, flips the script, accusing Batman of breaking and entering. Suddenly, the Dark Knight is the one in handcuffs, or worse, he makes a run for it. With the cops in pursuit, imagine the live news coverage, the headlines. Batman's black and white moral world doesn't fit neatly into the messy realities of the legal system. In real life, evidence obtained illegally would be inadmissible in court. Batman's method of justice, vigilantism, would undermine the entire case. Even if the congresswoman is guilty, he's no longer the caped crusader saving Gotham. He's just a man in a mask operating outside the law. The media would have a field day, and politicians would use the situation to question whether Gotham needs a man like Batman at all. His image as a hero would start to unravel, and people might even begin asking if his brand of justice causes more harm than good. Batman would be canceled. And let's be honest, Bruce Wayne's story is about conquering fear, but if he thinks putting on a costume and single-handedly fighting crime will fix systemic corruption, isn't that delusion? The deeper you dig into real-world problems, the more Batman's actions start to look like an overreaction, or worse, a misguided obsession. It's not just a heroic journey. It's the tale of a man wrestling with a severe mental disorder, with the inability to see the long-term consequences of his actions. Without the Joker, without the Penguin, or the Riddler, without Gotham's rogues gallery, what is Batman? He becomes less of a mythic hero and more of a vigilante with questionable judgment. In a world full of bureaucratic corruption, legal red tape, and public opinion swayed by media, Batman would find himself tilting at windmills in a city where his actions might not change much at all. Without those iconic villains to push him to his limits, Batman becomes just another man lost in the gray areas of a system that he can't fix with fists or fear. And this is where I lose the thread with the recent Joker films or even Batman movies. Why this obsession with grounding the villains, with delving into the meat and bones of their backstories? The Joker is evil, plain and simple. His motives are unclear, and that's precisely what makes him terrifying. He keeps you guessing. That's the sinister nature of true evil. I don't get this obsession with grounding villains. It is troubling. Maybe it is just me, or does it comes across as an attempt to justify evil by projecting personal moral corruption into the character? It's as if these storytellers are trying to soothe their own discomfort by saying, see, evil is only the result of injustice. To them I say, whatever helps you sleep at night, but that's not who the Joker is. He's terrifying because his evil doesn't come from a place of reason. It's chaotic, senseless, and that's what makes him the perfect foil to Batman. There's nothing to rationalize, unless, of course, you're trying to justify your own evil through projection. And just in case you are wondering, yes, he is. We've all had bad days, but no one is demanding to know what the Joker's first day at work was like, or how he paints his face, where he bought his costume, or how he came about it. What is next? 60 Minutes with the Joker? We don't care about Bruce Wayne's personality quirks unless there's a lunatic to match him. Like the Joker, the Batman persona as a hero only makes sense when he faces someone as chaotic and unpredictable as the Joker. Joker has a brand, and that brand is chaos and destruction. He exposes the moral loopholes in society. No, he is not crazy for that menacing, maniacal laughter, the hypocrisy, the audacity. It all becomes too much. That's where the Joker's laugh grows louder and louder, mocking society's coping mechanisms against its own betrayal, challenging you to accept that it is and has always been a failed experiment. He knows you had your moments where you didn't crave food, shelter, or another chance to rebuild anymore. All you wanted is for the system to fail, for the Armageddon to strike it all down. In that moment, imagine having the power to make it happen. That's Joker trying to do just that over and over again, and each time stands in his way, the OG of superheroes. Yes, sometimes it may feel like Batman stands to protect what is well beyond salvage, a defender of a flawed system, fighting to preserve the broken pieces that others, like Joker, would rather see destroyed. This is the eternal conflict. The battle between order and chaos, between hope and despair, where Joker laughs because he sees the cracks and wants them to break wide open, while Batman fights to hold together what's already shattered. The Joker is a critique of Batman himself. It shows how flawed his character truly is. Batman rises to the occasion despite the shortcomings of the system because he believes that deep down the world is worth preserving. Joker, on the other hand, sees the flaws and decides that everything must burn. He understands very well that sometimes the bad guys manipulate the system for their greed. He knows that because it's technique too. He managed to turn even someone as strong and grounded as Harvey Dent, and that's Joker's whole point. It's all a joke, and therefore, it should all fall apart. But this is where the philosophical line is drawn. The Joker fails to understand that this is how humanity grows and develops. Empires learn from each other. The American Empire learned from the Romans, who learned from the Greeks, who learned from the Egyptians, who learned from the Sumerians, and so on. You don't throw away the world because evil exists in it. You fight the evil and move forward. That's where Batman stands, rising up against Joker every time. And that's why Batman always wins. Joker is just a man who has given up on everything. Ironically, he uses the system's moral failings to rationalize his desire to destroy it. But civilization grows through these conflicts, not by obliterating everything in the face of evil. Look at history. The Hellenistic Greeks celebrated their invasion of Persia, modern-day Iraq, without a second thought, reveling in their conquest with no regrets. But such is not the case today. In our world, invading another country under false pretenses leads to public condemnation, even war crime trials. That's progress. Joker is like those Greeks. He seeks destruction simply because he can, because to him, nothing holds any value anymore. He believes that when you strip away the illusions, the world is empty and meaningless. Batman, however, stands between that chaos and order. He represents the belief that even in a broken world, there are people who rise to the occasion, who help others at great personal cost, sometimes even at the expense of their own lives. Batman sees this, understands it, and asks, isn't some of this worth saving? Joker is weak, flawed, and evil because he knows exactly why Batman stands guard over a system he deems a lost cause: society. Joker seeks destruction not because it serves a higher purpose, but because it's his desperate way of seeking absolution for something deep within himself. His destruction is not driven by grand ideology, but by a hollow, personal need. There's no true depth beyond that, only emptiness. Joker's charm, charisma, and witty quips are nothing more than a facade, a ruse designed to lure in those who can't see the void behind his actions, who have not yet been introduced to the concept of reasoning. But Batman sees through it, and that's why he never kills Joker. Would you really want Batman to kill the lost souls who follow Joker's chaotic ideology? No, because Batman represents something more. He represents hope. He stands for the belief that, despite its flaws, the world is worth saving. He understands that growth, even in a broken system, is possible, and that's the very reason he continues to fight. Even if society is deeply flawed, Batman knows that abandoning hope means abandoning the very potential for humanity to improve. And how do I know all of this? Because 85 years of character development We've seen Batman and Joker evolve over the years, each time reflecting deeper insights into human nature, morality, and the struggle between order and chaos. So how did Todd Phillips mess this up? How do you even conceive of a world where the Joker exists without Batman? That's where the whole concept of Joker falls apart. Joker doesn't exist in a vacuum. His entire persona, his chaos, his unpredictability, everything that makes him the Joker depends on the existence of Batman. Without Batman, there's no counterbalance, no order for Joker to rebel against. Joker's role is to disrupt the system that Batman is desperately trying to hold together. Without Batman, Joker becomes just another broken man in a broken world. He's no longer an agent of chaos. He's just a tragic figure lashing out at society. Todd Phillips' decision to separate Joker from Batman strips away the very thing that gives the character depth and complexity. Joker is supposed to be a reflection of Batman's struggle, the embodiment of chaos to Batman's order, but in these films, Arthur Fleck is simply a man whose life spirals out of control. There's no larger narrative, no philosophical conflict, just one man's descent into madness, devoid of the meaningful counterpart that Batman provides. It's not just about creating a villain, it's about creating a counterpoint to a hero. Joker's entire existence revolves around challenging Batman's moral compass. Remove Batman, and Joker is just a man lost in his own delusions without any real purpose. That's how Todd Phillips messed this up, by isolating Joker from the very force that defines him. Without that dynamic tension between order and chaos, Joker is no longer terrifying, he's just pitiable. Todd Phillips' Joker is a product of society's failings, a tragic figure to be pitied. He is not the personification of chaos. Phillips decided to reduce him to a symbol of societal decay, a man who had a bad start in life and slowly snapped. But that's not Joker. Joker doesn't break because of an abusive mother. Phillips took decades of rich character development, a beautifully crafted dynamic between Joker and Batman, and threw it out. And for what? For the same manipulation that gets people to laugh at The Big Bang Theory? To slap on some exaggerated acting and hope people find it deep because they've been told it is? People don't laugh because they find it funny. They laugh because the laugh track tells them to. People don't praise the Joker films because they truly understand the character. They praise them because they've been told these films are profound, but they're not. They're hollow imitations of what made Joker great in the first place. Joker 2019, Todd Phillips' grim attempt at a serious comic book movie, but really it was just Taxi Driver for the Instagram age. The movie feels like a 2-hour apology letter to people who hate superhero movies, desperately trying to be taken seriously by a world that's moved on from nihilistic loner dudes with mommy issues. If you've ever wanted to see what happens when Taxi Driver meets a poorly lit interpretive dance recital, well, you're in luck. Let's set the stage, shall we? Joaquin Phoenix plays Arthur Fleck, a man so tragically sick he looks like he could be one call away from being cast in Les Miserables as the dying beggar. He laughs awkwardly, not in a menacing way, but in the same way someone does after you make a joke at their expense, and they're not sure if they're allowed to feel offended. The film opens with Arthur scraping by as a part-time clown and a full-time walking pity party, and make no mistake, this isn't some high-stakes Joker origin story. This is the story of a man who takes the world's beatings until he snaps, and the worst part? We saw the snap coming an hour and a half ago. And then we get to the laugh, the most uninspired, strained attempt at unsettling you. Heath Ledger's Joker had a cackle that crawled under your skin. Arthur Fleck sounds like he's auditioning for an open mic night at the world's most awkward comedy club. His Joker laugh isn't a villainous declaration, it's an unfortunate medical condition like an allergy to fun. The character study we were promised, it's about as deep as a puddle after a drizzle. Arthur isn't uncovering some hidden, darker self. He's just playing dress up in a clown suit, pretending that society is solely to blame for his spiral into madness. What pushes him over the edge? A bad week, that's it. He's a guy who got beaten up a few too many times and decided to start shooting people because life didn't go his way. That's not anarchy. That's the same pathetic excuse used by cowards who commit atrocities and claim they were wronged by the world. Todd Phillips' grand message boils down to society bad, therefore I am good. Really? Thanks for the revelation, Todd, as if we needed you to tell us that a Gotham teeming with poverty and crime wasn't doing so great. The film presents the shallow narrative as if it's groundbreaking, but all it does is take a simplistic view of complex issues and pretend it's profound. But here's the thing. Joker wasn't successful because it was good. It was successful because the media made it into a spectacle, warning that it might inspire real-life violence. Oh no, they said, this movie will provoke riots. People rushed to the theaters, not because they were interested in a slow, very slow burn character study, but because they wanted to be part of something controversial. It was the Fight Club of 2019, only this time instead of anarchist soap making, we got a guy slow dancing in a public toilet. The manufactured controversy made people think they were about to see something truly edgy. I really thought this was going to be some truth to power kind of blockbuster from Hollywood. Finally, yes? No! Instead, we got an awkward performance piece with Joaquin Phoenix pirouetting around like he's confused about whether he's supposed to be a tragic antihero or a failed mime. And that brings us to the Joker dance, because Todd Phillips wants so desperately to give Arthur Fleck this grand, poetic transformation symbolizing Arthur's full descent into madness. Before this, he kills 3 people, a moment that should have triggered a sense of transformation in itself, but it doesn't. Instead, it comes off like the slow, drug-induced spiral of a regular junkie slipping into psychosis. We're told this is his transformation, his emergence as the chaotic villain we know, but all we get is a series of confused, awkward, interpretive moves, like a trash bag floating aimlessly in the wind, with Todd capturing it on camera thinking it's high art. This isn't chaos, it's just standard junkie behavior. The film tries desperately to sell it as a deep, pivotal moment, but it feels hollow, more like a gimmick than a genuine unraveling of character. The real trick Todd Phillips pulled wasn't creating an iconic Joker performance. No, the real Joker magic was manipulating the audience into thinking they were watching something deep. Arthur Fleck isn't the Joker we know. He's just a guy in clown makeup who happens to get famous because he accidentally starts a riot. He's no agent of chaos. He's the guy who starts a food fight in the cafeteria because he's mad about the lunch menu. If this Joker met Heath Ledger's version, he'd probably cry out of sheer awkward insignificance. Arthur's not exposing society's hypocrisy. He's whining about how he doesn't fit in. He's not laughing at the world. He's begging it to notice him, and when he finally gets the attention he craves, the message of the film feels as shallow as his forced laughter. Society bad, me sad is about as profound as this character gets. And then there's that big moment on The Murray Franklin Show, the grand crescendo of Arthur's transformation into the Joker, except it's not. Instead of a menacing display of the Joker's twisted genius, it's just a guy shooting someone because he didn't like being made fun of on TV. Arthur doesn't want to bring Gotham to its knees. He just wants Murray Franklin to know he's mad. The Joker is supposed to be Batman's ultimate nemesis, a villain who thrives on chaos, who can outthink and outmaneuver even the Dark Knight himself. But Arthur Fleck? He's a guy who couldn't handle the roast and decided to take it personally. There's no grand plan here, no evolution into the criminal mastermind we know Joker to be. He's not plotting Gotham's downfall. He's too busy spiraling into his own self-pity. Without Batman, without that dynamic tension between hero and villain, Arthur's descent feels pointless. He's not becoming Joker. He's just a guy with a gun, a grudge, and a clown makeup. At the end of the day, Todd Phillips gave us a Joker origin story without any of the things that make Joker the Joker. No chaotic brilliance, no mind games, no battle of wits, just a sad man lashing out because the world didn't notice him. The bank robbers wearing Joker masks in the opening heist scene of The Dark Knight had more menace, cunning, and chaos in their fleeting moments than Arthur Fleck does across 2 entire films. Honest thoughts, really, that's not Joker. That's a guy named Arthur Fleck with face paint. And as an origin story for one of comic book history's greatest villains, it falls flat. And you would think it could not possibly sink lower than that, but I was wrong because it does worse. With Joker, Folie, Deux, 2024, or what I am told Todd Phillips wanted to title it, the American-Serbian film, Joker 2 kicks off with Arthur Fleck, our crown prince of misery, back in Arkham Asylum. If you thought he was pitiful in the first film, buckle up. Joaquin Phoenix now looks like he's halfway through a hostage video, slumping through the first act like a guy who's 2 seconds away from collapsing under the weight of his own apathy. And he always asking for a cigarette. The plot reanimates with Arthur on trial for the murders he committed in the first movie. 6 victims, including his mother. His defense? Oh, it wasn't him. It was the Joker personality inside him. Because, of course, this sequel needed a half-baked dissociative identity disorder subplot to keep the plot on life support. From there, Phillips goes completely off the rails. Apparently, the way to make this grim origin story feel fresh is to turn it into a musical, but not the fun, whimsical kind. No, this is a dreary, self-indulgent slog where every musical number feels like it's stalling for time, sucking any remaining momentum out of the film like a vacuum cleaner for narrative energy. And just when you thought it couldn't get more awkward, Lady Gaga enters the scene as Harleen Quinzel, repelling any style and charisma wherever she goes. Though you'd barely know she's supposed to be Harley Quinn. Gaga and Phoenix together have all the chemistry of a unkempt hooker and 50-year-old virgin engaged in price negotiation, uncomfortable, awkward, and definitely not meant to share the screen, let alone the same movie. The sex scene proves it. Lady Gaga was supposed to play Harleen, this hyper-obsessed psychiatrist who falls for the Joker, turning into a charismatic fangirl. Instead, she's a charisma repellent, dragging down the already sluggish pace every time she shares the screen. And then there's the singing. Oh God, the singing. And imagine sitting through a tedious courtroom drama where Arthur Fleck's lawyer is arguing that Joker is a separate personality disorder. And just as you think the movie might actually do something, it bursts into song. These aren't Broadway numbers. They're sad attempts at profundity, with Phillips practically begging the audience to recognize his failure as a filmmaker as some kind of genius subversive technique. At some point, Phillips decides Arkham needs more brutality. Arthur is violently taken advantage of. His friend is murdered. None of it feels like storytelling, more like a therapeutic rage dump from Phillips. The scenes are so brutal that they stop feeling like a movie and start feeling like Phillips airing out his frustrations with the whole life thing. It's ugly, it's gratuitous, and worst of all, it's boring. The violence stops meaning anything, becoming a repetitive loop of nihilism that serves no point other than to hammer home Phillips' disdain for life itself. Understand, they're not just brutal for the sake of brutality. This isn't about Arthur Fleck being destroyed. It's about Todd Phillips showing us how he feels, how the audience, the critics, and the whole world took what he thought was his magnum opus and shredded it. Arthur's sexual violence at the hands of the guards, that's Phillips getting metaphorically violated by the public. The guards aren't just Arkham employees. They're stand-ins for the audience, critics, and everyone else who gave it to him after the first Joker film. It's as if Phillips is saying, you wanted blood? Fine, here's mine. Every gut punch of violence feels less like narrative progression and more like Phillips shouting, you were wrong, I hate making movies. The audience took Joker, which was actually another piece of political activism masquerading as a Joker origin story, and instead of seeing it for what it was, they latched onto moments that felt like they spoke truth to power, the complete opposite of what Phillips intended. So now Phillips has created a film that leaves no room for doubt and is exactly what he wanted to deliver the first time, but missed. A soulless orgy of violence, self-pity, and abuse with no substance behind it. After the audience has had their fun, after they've used Arthur Phillips for entertainment, what happens? He's tossed back into the void, left to rot in the darkness, discarded like nothing, just like Phillips felt abandoned by a world that praised his movie for all the wrong reasons and then tossed him back into his life of disillusionment and creative frustration. The violence in Folie Deux isn't about pushing the character of Joker forward. It's about Phillips working out his own bitterness, like a rage zombie lashing out, blaming everyone else for getting in the way of her activism. Arthur isn't the only one trapped in Arkham. Phillips himself is locked in there with him, spiraling through a cycle of brutality that doesn't mean anything anymore. It's ugly, sure, but worse than that, it's meaningless, just like Phillips seems to think his own creative efforts have become. Clearly, Phillips isn't mad at Arthur, he's mad at us. As I mentioned earlier, the first Joker wasn't a hit because it was a great movie. It became a viral sensation because the media screamed about how dangerous it was, how it needed to be banned for fear of inciting violence. The controversy sold tickets. Phillips thought it was his genius at work. But when the hype faded and the dust settled, it became clear Joker was a mediocre film that rode the wave of outrage to box office success. And now with Folie Deux, you can sense Phillips's bitter disillusionment with the very audience that made him rich. This sequel? It's his rage tantrum. Take Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn as Exhibit A. She's a liar who manipulates Arthur Fleck with her broken woman routine, representing all the obsessed fans who latched onto Joker in the first film, glorifying his chaos as if it somehow made them special. Harley's obsession with Arthur mirrors the way the audience obsessed over the first film's superficial deepness. And when she reveals she's not pregnant, having lied to Arthur about it just to keep him around, you realize the whole point. This sequel isn't for the fans because they were never really fans, just hype chasers who fell for a mediocre movie with good marketing. A quick side note since we were on the subject, the pregnancy reveal, now that was a moment that was more confusing than shocking, like the film was trying to pull a fast one on us, but didn't quite stick the landing. For the first half, I honestly thought Gaga's Harley was being set up as some sort of subversive transgender character. I mean, the whole prison wing situation felt ripe for that kind of twist. Gaga's Harley is in a male wing surrounded by men, and yet somehow she has this awkward, grimy sex scene with Arthur in a cell that's about as romantic as a public toilet. The logistics of it had me scratching my head. How does that even happen in Arkham, of all places? It seemed like the film was building up to something more layered, maybe even daring, especially given how strange and surreal everything else was. And then there's the opening scene where the Joker willingly shares a kiss with a young man, which was quite touching since the young man told him he has never been kissed before, and turns out Joker has a reputation of being a good kisser in the prison. I swear to God, at this point, I am the one who is asking, is it just me or the world is going crazy? Which made me think the guards were setting him up for something. Maybe they were leading him into some kind of twisted joke, given how they laugh at him when he complies. The whole vibe feels like it's moving towards some elaborate humiliation, a cruel setup. They're clearly portrayed as villains taking pleasure in Arthur's degradation. So when the pregnancy bomb drops, it just felt like the rug was pulled out from under whatever the movie could have been doing with Harley's character. For a moment, I thought, okay, are they going to make this a transgender female twist, and maybe this is the guard's way of toying with Arthur? After all, if they're homophobic enough to laugh at him kissing a man, why not push things further? But no, instead of anything complex, we get the pregnancy reveal out of nowhere and with no real explanation. It felt like a missed opportunity, like the movie flirted with something genuinely interesting and then backed off, opting for shock value over substance. And therefore, what was supposed to be shocking just ended up being confusing, left me wondering what the point of any of it was. Were we supposed to be stunned or just left shaking our heads? Because the latter is exactly what happened. Harley drops the I'm pregnant bomb and it all falls apart. Anyway, then comes the grand finale. Harleen abandons Arthur after his courtroom renunciation of the Joker. She was never in love with him. She only wanted the Joker. Now, stripped of his identity and purpose, Arthur is killed by a random inmate who carves a smile into his own face. That's Phillips's final cynical message. The Joker's legacy isn't chaos with purpose. It's just random, senseless violence carried on by nobodies. His nihilism is passed down like a viral meme, empty, meaningless, and perpetuated by the same faceless masses who made his first movie a hit. This is Phillips's way of saying that Joker's legacy is nothing more than mindless violence carried on by nobodies who have no connection to the character. In the end, Joker's legacy is just another random act of violence passed down by faceless copycats. The real joke of Joker 2 is that it exists. Phillips couldn't handle the character the first time, and this second attempt is an even bigger mess. It's a film drenched in self-loathing, not passion, a Faustian bargain Phillips wishes he could escape from. If Joker was a fluke that hit box office gold by accident, Folie Deux is his bitter divorce from the very thing that made him famous. In the end, Joker, Folie Deux is the perfect example of what happens when a filmmaker stumbles into success and can't quite handle it. The first film's success, a fluke born out of controversy, shock value, and a misreading of depth where there wasn't much. But the sequel, that's just Todd Phillips' imposter syndrome playing out on the big screen, loud and clear. Watching these films is like witnessing a child endlessly attempt the bottle flip challenge, failing miserably every time. You can't look away. At first, there's that brief flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll land it. But as it drags on, you start to realize the kid has no chance of sticking the landing, and the real entertainment isn't in the flip attempt at all. It's in the tantrums and the increasingly desperate failures. Eventually, that child, like Phillips, gives up on even trying. He stops caring about the goal. There's no flip, no payoff, no artistry. He just smashes the bottle, not out of frustration, but because he's figured out that the audience is more entertained by his fumbling than by any attempt at real skill. And that's where the sequel leaves you. Phillips smashing his own bottle, throwing together empty shocks and brutal scenes, hoping that the spectacle of watching him fumble his success will be enough to keep you watching. By the end, you're left wondering why you ever cared in the first place. There's no real Joker here, just the remnants of a filmmaker who, like Arthur Fleck, accidentally became famous for all the wrong reasons and is now left feeling sexually desecrated by those he thought were his audience.